This is Hashtag History, episode 64. I'm Rachel.
And I am Leah.
This week on the podcast, we are covering a topic that I have actually been holding off on covering for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And really the only reason for that is because I wanted to ensure I did the topic justice, that I had enough time to really dive into the research, so that I could really do my due diligence in covering all the aspects of this tragic time period in American history. We've had it planned out for this season for a while, and I'm actually glad we held off because bringing it full circle to current events, anti-Asian hate is not new.
No.
This isn't a new concept, but we have all been watching the devastating results of anti-Asian hate here in America that has been at an incline over the course of this last year. The reason I am glad we are covering this topic now is because I think people are more receptive to hearing it. People are more understanding and more willing to listen and learn. What I hate, though, is when we cover a devastating historical topic, something that is in the past, i.e. historical.
Yeah.
And we're able to directly relate it to current events.
It's like, why? Why has nothing changed?
Why has nothing changed? Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. That should not be the case. When we cover the Tulsa Race Massacre or the American Indian boarding schools, for example, we should not be able to have clear examples of the same hatred in current events.
Yeah.
But here we are, and we have to do better. We must do better. And the first step in that is learning our history and learning that this isn't new, that this is a pattern. Because today we are discussing the Japanese detention camps, camps that were established here in the United States during World War II following the attack of Pearl Harbor. Under President Franklin Roosevelt's Executive Order 9066, it became policy for the U.S. government to place hundreds of thousands of Japanese in detention camps here on American soil, including here in our home state of California.
Here in Sacramento.
What in Sacramento?
5,000 Japanese from Sacramento were interned in camps.
I did not realize that.
Yeah, and the only reason I know that is at my job, we bestow a President's Medal for Distinguished Service, and I did this event yesterday, and the person we bestowed it on was a survivor of the Japanese internment, and she... her and her family started a Japanese archive at the library at the university I work at. So this really cool timing. She's the sweetest person in the world.
I don't even know what to say.
Yeah.
Do you know how old she was when she was?
Very young. She was a child.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Full circle.
Full circle. Unfortunately, full circle.
Yeah.
Of the more than 120,000 people placed in these detention camps, more than 60% of them were American citizens. It was said that someone with as little as 1/16th Japanese lineage could be placed in a detention camp.
Oh my God. 1/16th?
1/16th. I know that was an awful, awful setup for our cocktail segment, but I don't have any levity right now.
Okay.
So sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. Take it away.
I'm Rachel.
And I'm Leah.
And this is Hashtag History, the podcast for both history nerds and history haters alike,
where we dive into history's greatest stories of controversy, conspiracy, and corruption.
I wanted to give a nod for today's cocktail to Japanese culture, something Japanese related, obviously, since we're doing Japanese internment camps.
Yeah.
So I searched for some common Japanese or Japanese-inspired drinks, and this sounded pretty good and super refreshing. We smelled it, and it smells fantastic.
Yes.
So I'm excited.
I'm so excited. I'm really excited because we haven't done a Japanese-inspired cocktail on the podcast, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I don't like... well, I can't say I don't like it. I've never tried sake, but I just don't think I'd like it.
Uh-huh.
And there's not a lot of other Japanese liquor that I've heard of.
Yeah.
And so this was interesting. Tell people about the first ingredient, which is umeshu.
Yes. So we went to Total Wine and honestly would have never... So right when we walk in, someone's like... welcome to Total Wine. Let me know if you need any help. And I was like, I will most likely be coming back to ask you for help. So she's like, okay, cool. So we're looking around. It's a pair. So my understanding, I didn't know much.
Mm-hmm. I had to do a little research.
And by I didn't know much, I mean, I didn't know anything. I just knew it was a pear flavored liqueur is all I knew.
Yeah.
And so I just went towards where I always get the like watermelon flavored liqueur or like, you know what I mean? Anyway, after like 12 seconds of that, I went back and grabbed the lady like, okay, I have no idea. She took me to another side of Total Wine I've actually never been down ever before.
Yeah.
Showed me where it is. I would have never found it. It's beautiful. It's like a green liquid. And I'm sure like some of you that know what umeshu umeshu looks like. I mean, you're like, yeah, I already know this. But for those that don't, it's like a really narrow, long bottle of like green liquor, and they're like huge pears in it, which
floating in
just
it.
float around. And then I posted a little bit about that on our Instagram, just like a little boomerang of me shaking the bottle. And one of our podcast friends, TK from For the Love of History podcast, she lives in Japan, and she told me that behind sake, this is like the number one liquor in Japan. So I am so excited. She said if we like sweet things, which we do, she said we will love it.
Yeah. So I did a tiny bit of research. Umeshu is, as you said, it's a Japanese liqueur made by steeping ume plums or plums while still unripe and green, and that's what gives it that green flavor, in shochu liquor and sugar.
Okay.
So it has a sweet, sour taste and an alcohol content of 10 to 15%. Woohoo!
Oh god.
So yay.
Oh my god.
Get ready. Varieties of it are available with whole or ume fruits contained in the bottle, as you said, and then some people make their own at home. It's actually not that hard to make at home, apparently.
If we love it, I am totally down to make my own.
Yeah, we'd have to find, I'm sure we can find some of the fruit somewhere, like a KP.
A market or something.
Yeah. So anyways, it contains a shot of the umeshu, 2 teaspoons of brown sugar.
I'm really excited about that. Brown sugar is my favorite.
Yeah,
I really love brown sugar.
I do too. 8 mint leaves, 2 lime wedges, which we actually had to use more because the limes we got were like not juicy at all. They were kind of lame. And then soda water or club soda to top it off.
I love all of these things. If I were to put together my favorite cocktail, I think it would be, we haven't tried it yet.
Yeah.
But I do think it would be very much in line with this. I love brown sugar. I love
mint.
I love mint. Oh my God. I love mint. And I love topping off a cocktail with like club soda or champagne or just something that has that like bubbly, fizzy sense to it.
Yeah. So apparently it's supposed to be like a Japanese inspired mojito. It's like a spin off that.
And a mojito is like I know. We both love mojitos.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So
I'm
cheers.
so excited.
Let me know what you think. I'm kind of nervous.
I'm not nervous at all. I think I'm going to love it.
Okay.
Is this my favorite cocktail we've ever had on this podcast?
Is it?
It might be. It tastes a lot like a mojito.
It's a lot. But it has that like, there's like there is a flavor to it that's different than a mojito.
I feel like we're going to need to take a shot, like a sip of the umeshu on its own. Yeah, just to like get a sense of that. Because I don't know that I super taste it in here because I don't know what the taste is I'm waiting for.
Yeah. I think, I can't tell. I think there's a flavor in there that I can't put my finger on. And that's probably what it is.
I love this.
I do too. It's gonna be done by the time we're done with this segment.
And that's gonna be dangerous. Dangerous.
Rating.
10. Is it a 10 for you too?
9.5.
I love this.
It's so good.
I love this.
Refreshing. Mm-hmm. And we've had some hot days here in Sacramento. Dang. Like,
I know, we really have.
It was like 90 something. 90?
It got up to 88 or something like that.
Okay.
90.
90.
No, it was 88. Delicious.
Mm-hmm. Drink up.
Okay, so something to address right up top is terminology. I think many of you, including myself, prior to doing more research for this episode, likely know of or refer to these camps as Japanese internment camps.
Which I refer to it that way.
Well, because that's the way I've always known them as also. Mm-hmm. What I'm not going to do throughout this episode, though, is refer to them as internment camps, and I'll tell you why. Mm-hmm. So internment is a term that's better classified for when you're referring to wartime detention of enemy aliens. Mm-hmm. Those detained in these camps that we are talking about today were not enemy aliens.
No.
They were largely American citizens. Historians and activists have really been working to get the terminology of this historical event changed from internment camp instead to incarceration or concentration camp or detention camp. Mm-hmm. So as you can see in the show title, We will be referring to it as the Japanese detention camps for this episode. And that was a really great lesson that I personally learned when putting together this episode.
Yeah, same.
Okay, so let's do a little context and background. We've already touched on the fact that the detention camps went into place following the bombing of Pearl Harbor, but like all racism, this story began long before that.
Obviously.
Yeah. In the late 1800s to early 1900s, there was a huge wave of Japanese immigration, over 200,000 people that came mostly to Hawaii or the West Coast states. And this is just a side note, but every time I hear the phrase West Coast, I want to say West Coast, best coast. But I'm going to resist saying that for this entire episode because West Coast were the worst.
Yeah, in some ways, definitely.
Today, in terms of this episode,
we are the worst. Yeah, that's very true.
Now, I'm sure it will come as no surprise that many European Americans instantly feared this wave of immigration because, in part, there were concerns that all of these Asian immigrants were going to run them out of business. Switching gears a little, we see these same themes with Chinese immigration that occurred in the mid-1800s. Many Chinese immigrants came to California in the mid-1800s to join the gold rush and to work on the California Railroad. Again, jealous of Chinese immigrants taking away jobs from white men, even though the Chinese population made up only 0.002% of the U.S. population at this point. The Chinese Exclusion Act was enacted in 1882, which suspended Chinese immigration for 10 years and made it impossible for Chinese immigrants to become naturalized American citizens.
And we actually just touched on it for 2 seconds during our San Francisco earthquake episode.
Yes, we did.
It's interesting.
This Exclusion Act would later be extended for an additional 10 years, and even more laws were created to limit the rights of the Chinese. One of the most outrageous of these was the requirement of all Chinese living here in America to carry with them special identification, and if ever caught without the identification on their person, they could be arrested or deported. Get this, though. This is the best part, and by best part, I mean...
Worst?
Worst part. By best, I mean worst. The only way they could be bailed out of this arrest or deportation threat was if they could get one credible white witness to vouch for them. I think what they did was they set up a scenario that was impossible. Like that's not going to happen.
What's credible, too? Like, if someone stepped up, they'd say, you're not a credible.
You're not a credible one. But I'm just like, what? I think that they set up a scenario where they're like, let's come up with something that could never possibly happen.
Yeah.
Getting one credible white witness. On the heels of the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Immigration Act of 1924 was placed. And I think just for me reading that, like on face value, that act sounds pretty all-inclusive. Like, okay, no more immigration from any country for a set amount of years, right? Mm-hmm. Wrong.
Yeah.
The Immigration Act of 1924 was incredibly specific. To summarize, the act essentially limited the number of immigrants that the U.S. would accept to 2% of the total number of individuals from each nationality that currently resided in the U.S. as of the 1890 census, and the act entirely excluded immigrants from Asia. And that's a good segue for me to discuss terminology again in reference to the Japanese Americans that were forced into these camps. I want to acknowledge that I recognize that although they were U.S. residents, they were not all necessarily American citizens, but that's not their fault. They were literally not allowed to be.
Right.
So I just want to be upfront that I will be referring to them all Japanese residing in America as Japanese Americans because, hi, they were.
Yeah.
So, even before the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the United States Office of Naval Intelligence had already begun conducting surveillance on Japanese Americans. Years and years prior to the Japanese detention camps, the ONI had already created a list of Japanese Americans that would be placed in a detention camp should war break out between Japan and the United States. I did not know that.
No, it doesn't surprise me at all, but I didn't know that either. Yeah.
And so I want to say that again, just to be really clear and really heard. And, you know, if anyone in the back needs this again, even before the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the United States had a list of Japanese Americans that they were prepared to place in detention camps.
Well, if you have to wonder, like now knowing that, I'm like, oh, of course, because immediately after Pearl Harbor, they start doing it.
Yes.
So that makes perfect sense that they had a list ready to go.
Yes. And this was just I felt like I knew a good amount about this. I learned so much. And that was one of the biggest things I learned was I just naively
thought it was
Didn't expect-
reactionary.
Yes.
Yeah.
And didn't expect that of our government. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? It gets worse than that, though, because the person commissioned by President Roosevelt to conduct a survey on Japanese loyalty to the U.S., a man named Curtis B. Munson, he stated in his report back to the president that the threat of domestic terrorism by the Japanese was basically non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
In a 29-page report titled the Munson Report, he wrote, "There is no Japanese problem on the coast." He wrote in his report that Japanese Americans were incredibly loyal to America. They had left their home to make this their home. They had raised their kids here. All of their wealth is here. They had broken from tradition and religion and culture in some cases to make America their home, and that most of them would become official legal American citizens if only given the chance. He estimated that 90 to 98% of Japanese Americans were loyal to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
He even said of those born in America to Japanese immigrant parents, get ready, this is a gross quote, he said they are pathetically eager to show their loyalty. They are not Japanese in culture, they are foreigners to Japan. This report was submitted to the White House 2 months before the attack on Pearl Harbor, and we know for a fact that President Roosevelt saw the report an entire month before that tragic day. Okay, so we've made it to December 7th, 1941. It's not the topic of this episode, so I won't spend too much time on it, although I totally could, especially the controversies surrounding it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the day of the attack on Pearl Harbor. At approximately 7:48 a.m. on December 7th, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Service attacked the Pearl Harbor Naval Base located on Oahu, Hawaii. In total, more than 2,400 Americans were killed that day, with nearly 1,200 injured. This would mark the entrance of the United States in World War II. It didn't take long for the U.S. government and the American people to turn on Japanese Americans, with many saying they did not trust them and wanted them, this is another quote, wiped off the map. Ugh. It was so bad. I actually want to have you check out this picture of a shop in Oakland, California, owned by a Japanese American, to see what he placed outside his shop window.
Yeah, so it has a big old sign in the window that says, "I am an American."
Mm-hmm.
He had to state that.
Mm-hmm. It started with the government placing curfews on Japanese Americans and voluntary evacuation, which only about 7% of Japanese Americans complied with. But very shortly thereafter, on February 19th, 1942, so only in a few months, like you already said, only in a few months after Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066. This order allowed for the military to intern Americans of Asian descent in exclusion zones, regardless of citizenship. So something else to keep in mind here is that this includes World War I veterans, Japanese Americans that fought in World War I.
Yeah.
On March 18th, the War Relocation Authority was established to essentially lock down Japanese Americans, not allowing them access to their homes or their businesses or their funds until the end of the war, upon which time they were told that they would be returned to Japan. And then on March 31st, Japanese Americans were told to report and register themselves at these command stations, where they would then be removed to a detention camp. Japanese Americans were forced to sell their land or their businesses within a matter of days or weeks before being removed, which we of course know this was totally taken advantage of. Without many options, they were forced to sell off their assets for a fraction of their worth, not knowing if or when they would see them again.
The person I was talking about earlier, who is from Sacramento and was in these camps, I guess her family, they were lucky enough to have a neighbor, a white man who took care of their farm and stuff, so they didn't actually have to sell it.
That is incredibly rare.
Yeah.
It should also be noted, because this is a much less known fact, that some German and Italian Americans were also detained on American soil during World War II. We don't talk about their detainment as much as Japanese detainment for a number of reasons. The main reason is because since there were so many German Americans in the United States at this time, the government was forced to actually do some research and detain these Americans on more of an individual basis, like actually having some evidence, albeit unsound evidence, to say that this individual person poses a threat to national security, and that's why we need to lock them up.
As opposed to a 5-year-old Japanese American child, it makes sense to put them in these camps because they're definitely a threat.
I was going to try to come up with a quippy response, but I mean, what you said is accurate and is really disgusting.
Yeah.
No, but that's exactly it.
That makes no sense.
It makes no sense.
There's no traceable I can't trace that logic.
No, you can't. The only logic to it is there were fewer Americans of Asian descent, and so it was easier to round them all up and do this mass sweeping of all Americans of Asian descent get forced into these detention camps. I also just want to note that America wasn't alone in creating these detention camps for those of Asian descent. Canada and Mexico also responded similarly.
I didn't know that there were Japanese in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. 'Cause they just, when they migrated, all came to the coast, pretty much. Yeah. But as for America, the first military zones reserved for these detention camps were created in California, Washington, and Oregon. So, like I said, hashtag West Coast, worst coast.
Oh, God.
They would eventually expand to Idaho, Utah, Arkansas, Wyoming, Colorado, and Arizona. And get this, the two in Arizona were on Native American reservations.
Oh, my God.
Despite protests from Native Americans. Prior to the creation of these official permanent sites, approximately 112,000 people were sent to what were called assembly centers, which were oftentimes racetracks or fairgrounds where they waited until they were sent to their long-term location. So again, racetracks and fairgrounds. So the living conditions were built for livestock.
Yeah.
This is Stephanie.
And Tux.
From the podcast Beyond Reproach, a show about political scandals from American history, but it's fun, we swear.
The idea behind our show is that politicians and government officials are meant to be public servants, and their behavior should be beyond reproach, but if history has taught us anything, it's that a lot of politicians are total scumbags.
So we decided to do a show where we drink period-appropriate historic cocktails while exploring some of the government scandals and shitty politicians of America's past. We are not historians. We're just a couple of drunks who never shut up and love history.
We hope you'll join us on Beyond Reproach for some big facts, good laughs, a little bit of swearing, a lot of drinking, and a real good time. America's history is juicy. We just add gin.
Okay, so let's talk about the conditions of these camps. Conditions changed from camp to camp, but across most camps, the living conditions were military barracks that, in some places, housed upwards of 25 people, despite the fact that these barracks were initially built for 4. So I have a picture here of some of the barracks.
So yeah, it's very clearly, well, first of all, let's talk about the setting in this photo. It's like a barren wasteland. You know what I mean? It just is totally like a desert, essentially.
Yeah.
And then there's these tiny little houses in a row. I shouldn't say tiny little houses. They're military grade houses. They're all built exactly the same. Yeah. But the fact that, 25 people are living in a house made for 4 is disturbing.
Yeah. Each couple was given 200 square feet. Given the fact that this was all during the war, supplies were low. Many of these facilities did not have plumbing or cooking appliances. The camps were guarded by armed soldiers and were surrounded by barbed wire. Although it was not common, there were some documented cases of a Japanese American getting too close to the fence surrounding the camp and being shot and killed by a guard. Mm-hmm. Medical care was available but scarce within these camps, given the horrendous sanitary conditions, or lack thereof, I should probably say. Over 40,000 immunizations for diseases such as smallpox and typhoid would eventually be administered. This limited medical staff was absolutely vital to pregnant mothers because, believe it or not, over the course of this detainment, nearly 6,000 babies would be born within these camps. Of the 112,000 Americans detained, approximately 30,000 of them were children. So I've refrained from using pictures of children in this episode because while I know it is so important to face history dead on, I myself talk about how important it is all the time. When I was putting together this episode, literally looking at the pictures of children had me crying. But I'm going to show one picture just because we have to discuss the irony, the disgusting irony in this image.
It's a group of Japanese Americans lined up, I'm assuming, outside one of these detention camps, and they're making them cite the Pledge of Allegiance. They're making them pledge their allegiance to a country that has them literally in prison camps.
Schools were set up within the detention camps, but as I'm sure you can imagine, they weren't great. The schoolrooms were super small. In fact, they used partitions in the room rather than using separate rooms to do separate activities. They didn't have desks or really any books. The only books they were provided with were all in English. In fact, the Japanese language was banned within the camps. At one point, the average student to teacher ratio at the elementary level in these schools was 48-1.
Sounds like the current California school system.
Like that.
No, that's a lot.
That makes me want to vomit. Like almost 50 children to moi. That makes me want to vomit.
Yeah.
Many times the teachers in these schools weren't certified teachers because you could not pay enough for a certified teacher to come into these schools, living under the same conditions as the prisoners, is what I'll call them, I guess, at these camps. To assess the loyalty of the detained people, in 1943, the War Relocation Authority sent around a questionnaire to all the detained adults called a Statement of United States Citizen of Japanese Ancestry. It was 28 questions, which we're going to look through them. And when we do, you'll see that they're relatively basic questions, but very intrusive questions. They're the types of questions you would get for like a home loan or a background check. There are a lot of questions about employment, your bank accounts, religion, political affiliation, even like your sports and hobbies. But what I would like you to do, Leah, is draw particular attention to the last two questions on this questionnaire. So check out this questionnaire. Feel free to mention any particular questions you come across. Okay. And then when you get to them, if you can read the last two out loud.
Okay. So it's asking for like contact information.
Which like, hi, my contact information is I'm at the Utah Detention Camp.
Yeah. Are you registered voter, marital status, relatives in Japan, your education, religion, membership in organizations, sports and hobbies.
Which I think there has been research into that basically what they were trying to determine was if when they wrote down sport, did they write down like judo or did they write down baseball?
Which baseball was huge in these camps, actually.
Yes, it absolutely was.
Have you ever been convicted by a court of criminal offense? List contributions you have made to any society, organization, or club. And then the last two you said, right?
Yeah.
Are you willing to serve in the armed forces of the United States on combat duty wherever ordered? And then the last one is, will you swear unqualified allegiance to the United States of America and faithfully defend the United States from any or all attack by foreign or domestic forces, and forswear any form of allegiance or obedience to the Japanese emperor or any other foreign government, power, or organization?
So when you see question 27, the one about would you, what is this?
Are you willing to serve in the armed forces?
What's your impression of that question?
I mean, it's the same as the one right under it. It's, do you swear allegiance, unquestioning allegiance? Yeah. What would you be willing to lay down your life for this country?
Yes. And my instant impression of question 27 is like, oh, okay, so you want me to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces. That's my impression. Is like, if someone's asking me, are you willing to? When I respond yes, am I saying, yes, I'm dedicated and committed to this country? Or am I saying, yes, sign me up?
Yeah.
I get that's what, when you're posed with that type of question. I mean, I'm making a really poor parallel
that's true.
here. But I'm like, this is a really poor parallel. But like at work, if your boss asks like, are you really good at Excel? Yes, I am. I love using Excel. Or do you say like, no, actually, I'm not that great because you don't want to be assigned to that project? You know what I'm saying?
I do, because I love Excel.
I do too. That's why it came to my mind. That was a really awful parallel. But I just think like that question feels two-pronged, right? Like, you're not asking necessarily strictly just for if I'm committed to this country, but you're also asking me if I'm willing to
literally die for it.
Yes.
And serve in a war that is currently ongoing.
Yes. So while the majority of Japanese prisoners did respond yes to both of these questions, there were several thousands that did not. And I don't believe at all that is a reflection of their loyalty to America whatsoever. Because, like I already shared, to be honest, I interpret responding to question 27 with a yes means my ass is about to get enlisted in the Army. Mm-hmm. And that was the reason why many responded no. What they didn't know was that this question was a test. In relation to the second question, many of these Japanese Americans had been told over and over again that they would be returned to Japan at the end of the war. So why would they renounce allegiance to the Emperor of Japan and then get themselves into trouble there when it became public knowledge that they had done so?
Yeah.
Regardless of this, approximately 33,000 Japanese Americans would end up serving the United States during World War II. The 100th Infantry Battalion was formed, made up of over 1,400 Japanese American men, and they would go on to become the most highly decorated U.S. military unit in American history.
Oh my God.
Within the camps, there were opportunities for jobs, but with very low wages. Many within the camps provided labor for the war effort when there was a labor shortage in farm work because, hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans had been forcibly removed from their farms. More than 1,000 of those detained at the camps were sent to do some of this seasonal farm work. On December 18th, 1944, the Supreme Court handed down two decisions that are nearly polar opposites. In the Korematsu versus United States matter, a 23-year-old man named Fred Korematsu was being forced to relocate to one of these detainment camps, and he refused. He even changed his name, and he underwent plastic surgery to look and sound less Japanese.
Wow.
Regardless, he was still arrested and eventually relocated to the Utah detention camp. He fought his case in court, appealing it all the way up to the Supreme Court that ruled that the detention of Japanese Americans was a military necessity during World War II. They ruled that, of course, it wasn't a racist decision to detain Japanese Americans. It was simply a matter of, quote, the military urgency of the situation demanded that all citizens of Japanese ancestry be segregated from the West Coast. In his dissenting opinion, Justice Robert Jackson said, the court for all time has validated the principle of racial discrimination. The principle then lies about like a loaded weapon, ready for the hand of any authority that can bring forward a plausible claim of an urgent need. On the exact same day that the Supreme Court handed down the Korematsu versus United States decision, they also handed down the Endo versus United States decision. Mitsui Endo was a young woman working as a clerk at the DMV here in Sacramento, where she lived.
Wow.
I couldn't figure out which one. I tried to do a lot of research, which Sacramento and like how long those buildings have been there. I tried to do a lot of research about this. All I know is they're all miserable. But that's probably, I'm sure that's nationwide DMV is miserable.
Correct, yeah.
But like I've been to several of the Sacramento ones and I hate all of them.
I've heard the Folsom one's not too bad.
when I was updating my last name after I got married, I went to the Lodi DMV. Beautiful.
I mean, I'm sure.
It was a truly pleasant experience, which cannot be said of any of the Sacramento DMVs.
Oh my gosh.
So Endo, Chi, and other state employees of Japanese descent were eventually fired following the attack on Pearl Harbor because, racism. Mm-hmm. Not that it matters, but Endo was born here in Sacramento, California. She only spoke English. She had family that served in the U.S. military, and she was a Christian. Again, not at all that it matters how assimilated she was insofar as her basic human rights are concerned, but this was all part of why she was selected to fight this habeas corpus case, because she was such a clear example of someone from Japanese descent that is as American as you can get. Mm-hmm. In an effort to get her to stop with her legal case, the War Relocation Authority actually offered to release her from the Utah detention camp where she was imprisoned, but she said no. The Supreme Court unanimously ruled in this matter that the United States could not detain a citizen that was, quote, conceitedly loyal to the United States. I appreciate the look of both confusion and exhaustion on your face.
Yes, truly. Exhaustion. That's a great way to put it.
Because that is how it feels. Because, again, both of these court decisions were released on the exact same day. So it's important to note how they differentiate. Essentially, the Supreme Court ruled that no, it's not unconstitutional to detain Japanese Americans, but also no, it is not okay to do so if they acknowledge their loyalty to the United States. Even though this whole thing is kind of backhanded, the Endo case was huge and paved the way for the release of Japanese Americans across the country. The day before these rulings were to be made public, Roosevelt declared that on December 17th, 1944, Japanese Americans could return to the West Coast the following month. These former prisoners were given $25 each.
Oh my God, I'm about to vomit. $25?
Yeah, I kind of thought you were serious about vomiting. Yes, $25. In today's money, that's the equivalent of a little under $400, which is nothing to especially on the West Coast.
Oh my God, $400 won't even get you a week's rent.
And I was going to say, in today's money, $400 is like, this is an exaggeration, but that's like 2 Costco trips for me.
Yeah.
That's 1 month's worth of groceries for me. So
for you and one other human being.
Yes.
Whereas most of these people are families with children.
Thank you for clarifying that. Yes, I'm referring to just myself and one other human being. Yeah. So they're given this $25 and a train ticket. As we know from what we discussed earlier, they returned home to nothing. These people had to sell their homes, their land, their businesses before being forcibly relocated. And because people are the worst and it takes a long time for change to trickle down, just because these people are no longer incarcerated doesn't mean that they are free and that people do not still have very racist sentiments about them. Mm-hmm. Japanese Americans found it extremely difficult to acquire jobs and housing and were faced with regular violence. In 1948, Congress passed the Japanese American Claims Act that allowed for Japanese Americans to claim compensation for their property loss. However, in order to do so, you had to have a record of your taxes for the years leading up to the relocation in these detention camps.
Like, I'm sorry, you just made me sell my house, all of my property. Where am I supposed to keep these tax records?
I mean,
I was in intern, and then I was in a detention center.
Truly, is the expectation that you've kept your taxes on your person for the last 3-4 years? Isn't that outrageous?
That's outrageous. So, and that's a perfect example of they know that's not possible for 99% of these people. So it's a very smart way of making sure there's
another impossible scenario.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In 1976, President Gerald Ford repealed Executive Order 9066 and signed a proclamation apologizing for the detention camps. In 1988, Congress issued a formal apology and gave reparations of $20,000, the equivalent of about $45,000 in today's money, to more than 81,000 Japanese Americans. On the 50th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, President George H.W. Bush issued another apology to Japanese Americans. In 1998, Fred Korematsu, we spoke about him earlier. He's the gentleman that he was the first Supreme Court case that basically said, like, no, it's not racist that we, put these people in camps.
Yeah.
He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Bill Clinton in California, thanks to a bill signed by former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger in 2010.
I like how you said that.
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger.
Because I was going to try
Schwarzenegger.
Thank you. That's what I was going to try for.
Arnold.
Thanks to him.
Yeah.
Every January 30th is now recognized as Fred Korematsu Day, making it the first day in U.S. history to be named after an Asian American. The United States Commission on Civil Rights is still working to get this day recognized as a national holiday. Before closing out this episode, I wanted to give a little plug here for another podcast to continue our love affair with Beyond Reproach.
It's right? Just really, it's a
little obsessive now.
A little obsessive
now at this point, because we did just mention them maybe 2 weeks ago in an episode.
Yeah, I mean, we mention them constantly.
Or every week.
Yeah.
They have also covered this topic in 2 of their episodes, and as always, they covered it so well. So if you are interested in learning more, definitely head over to Beyond Reproach podcast. That's all.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh, snaps. That was good.
Was it, though?
I mean, it was depressing. And really just sad to see the cycle that is happening, with all these same sentiments.
Mm-hmm. Again, it's really devastating when you can see such clear parallels between things that happened 60 plus years ago and today.
Yeah.
And I think I felt like I knew a lot about this. What I didn't realize before doing my research was the fact that there was already a list in place.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Prior to.
Not surprising, but that's just...
Yeah. And the other piece that really stood out to me was that piece about that particular battalion that ended up going on to be the most highly decorated military unit in U.S. military history. It's just... it's just that piece alone almost made me cry when I was putting it together, because it's just so devastating that these people and their families were detained and they had no rights, and yet they defended this country and they did it so valiantly that they go down in history as the most decorated unit.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of Hashtag History.
We'll share the pictures that we discussed on the episode to our Instagram, and all sources used to put together the episode can be found on our website at hashtaghistory-pod.com.
And then subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you use. Make sure you share about us. You can maybe do like a little repost of our episode on your Instagram. And then we would love it so much if you would give us a rate and review over on Apple Podcasts.
Speaking of Instagram,
look at that.
Look at that. Be sure to check us out on there at #history_podcast.
And then come join us over on Patreon, where for as little as $1 a month, you can help support our books and booze supply. You also get access to some behind-the-scenes content. We mail you cards and stickers, and maybe some bonus episodes coming up.
Yeah, maybe.
All right, thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Time period.
Time.
Tragic. Anyway, that all was to say that, like, today was not that nice weather day that we have been having the last few days.
Yeah.
Today was rough.
At least for bicyclists.
For bicyclists, yes. Oh my God, I feel like...
Burping?
Yep.
Are you...
Well, I always feel like it. I'm not going to.
Okay.
I still have the same feelings as other humans. I just can't execute.
Okay.
The U.S. would accept... Oh, shit. And of course, the picture I chose is 2 inches wide, even though there's a million pictures available online. I just checked my pictures again this morning. I was like, it. Anyway, it was a 28 question. It was 28 questionnaire. Detention camps